64 was closed with down trees. That was the least of our concern. They made sure there was no injuries. CERT team was called out to help. Kane County OEM came out. They were able to clear up the road for us because IDOT takes an extremely long time to do that on their roadways. So everyone worked together as a team, and it worked out well. There was no injuries with it. That's all I have.
Okay, thank you, Chief. All right, moving on, Treasurer is not here, and Building and Zoning, we have nobody here from Building and Zoning. So we'll move on. We have no action items this evening. Move on to 8 discussion items, a Burning Tree Neighborhood Stormwater Drainage System. Nick, are you going to speak on that? Okay.
Yes, please.
Sure. Floor is yours.
Thank you. So I was contacted by these folks in Burning Tree a month or so ago, right after we had all the snow melt, and they had significant water that they were concerned about in their front yard, in the ditches. As one of the residents just spoke, they'd already contacted King County, the village, the highway department, and they were looking for some solution as currently nobody has a record of this system. And without a record of the system, nobody is taking ownership of the system. So this drainage system affects 9 homes to my count, but actually travels buried underground through 8 homes. What the system does is the roadways in this neighborhood are pitched and graded down to this collection point. There's culverts that cross the street, so water travels from the north to the south side of the road and all collects at this culvert. This culvert goes through the yards, goes to a big cast iron manhole cover, a catch basin, and then travels out to Old LaFox Road, where the water then is graded out to Burlington and I think goes east of Burlington Road. Where they're at right now, and the sort of the discussion topics that I included in the agenda are, one, if it's their ownership and they own this drainage system, that would give them the ability to decommission the system, to completely eliminate it. It would give them, potentially, if they could, get everybody together and maintain this system, that would be their option as well. But I think the bigger concern for us is if the system were decommissioned, what negative effects does that have on our roadways, that water collecting? And also, the question kind of remains is what responsibility does the village or the highway department have as far as the water that is in these ditches? What is supposed to happen to that water? Is it okay for that water to overflow into folks' yards? Because the drainage law that's I included in here talks about naturally occurring water flowing into someone's yard. This isn't naturally occurring water. This is water directed and graded to this point, which is affecting these folks. Another solution, and there may be more, and I hope there are more that we can discuss, would be a special service area. I included a precedent in the same neighborhood from 2009 where the village with Kane County and the residents created a special service area to fund the installation and the future maintenance of a very similar drainage system, doing the exact same thing. So we have a precedent for doing that. Really the question there is, are all 8 homeowners willing to have a special service area attached to their PIN? How many of the homeowners would need to agree? I don't know. And I suppose the last thing is, of course, that's backed by a bond, so then the village is taking on debt. So then we're setting a precedent. It's low-risk debt, assuming these homes don't get foreclosed on and folks continue to pay their taxes, then they're no-risk debt. the special service area would fund the bond, the repayment of the bond. And then the last solution that I put in here to discuss is regrading the ditches so that the water flows to the detention area or somewhere away from this collection point. Ray was really kind to come to the meeting tonight, and he has some GIS maps, and he also consulted with the homeowners and met on the property, and he can kind of, hopefully, if it's okay, President, for Ray to describe kind of what the highway department's abilities are and your restrictions as far as just like maintenance, and then Ray, you take it from there,
Okay.
if you don't mind. Thank
Okay, I met with Nick already. I've also met with Mark Rooney out, and they're, most of these residents, not all of them, but most of them, Jim Dillon and Sweet, I think, the son? Yeah, okay, and then also the Tesla? Yeah. So anyway, they do have a problem, serious problem. They're scared, okay? So if the water keeps coming, the level's gonna keep going higher and higher and higher, and what they're afraid of is it going into their homes. So they do need help. The problem we have, we can't go beyond the boundaries. That's just the way it is. That's the law, state of Illinois. The highway district is not allowed to go beyond our rights of way. But we can give you insight, and I've done a lot of checking on this and investigating with Jim and a couple of the others. And what's going on there is it doesn't seem to be a really professional built system. There's a steel culvert that's actually intruding into our ditch. The ditch has been modified to catch the water from either direction. And the reason being is it wasn't draining the way the builder probably anticipated it should drain. I can show you the layout by all these topographical maps and the water flow, the anticipated flood inundation and all that. And some places, even between their house, it was designed to accumulate water. So there is going to be somewhat of an accumulation of water. We recommend against trying to change all the terrain because it's going to be extremely expensive to build up between their houses, get rid of that easement that's there. Well, it seems like it's like they call it an easement. I'm going to call it a swale, okay? So there's a swale there for the water to flow above ground. There was the steel culvert is connected to some concrete sections of culvert, and then it bends on a 90-degree angle, goes all the way down to a catch basin, and then from that catch basin there's another tube that goes out to Old LaFox that joins up with Burlington. At the bottom of that hill where this exit tube is, there is a catch basin on the south side of Old LaFox. There are two other catch basins on the other side of Old LaFox. And then also keep in mind the original drainage that was supposed to go, the way it was supposed to follow, is beyond Jim's house and between his house and the corner house, and was supposed to naturally flow that way and then trickle between their two houses down to the low spot where the highway district did have a project with the county and put in a huge culvert to catch the water down in this real low detention area, go under the road to the other side, and then flow down the road until you get to Burlington, and then go eventually to the cross culvert that takes it to the creek. That is the one that didn't work, and that's why this system was put in. If they could get some help to repair this system that's there, in other words, put the right kind of culvert in, a concrete culvert, put a catch basin instead of this 90-degree angle, because every section is turned a little bit to where it's leaving gaps on the far side of the angle, the 90-degree angle. I'm surprised they don't have sinkholes everywhere because of the way it's put together. It should have a catch basin going straight to, it should have a concrete culvert going straight to the catch basin another straight shot of concrete to the other catch basin that's in neighbor's backyard, what, 2-3 doors down? Okay, and then there's an offshoot from that catch basin that goes into the tube that drains down the hill. That's how it should work. I think somebody, the reason it's not on the GIS, I think somebody set this up kind of behind the scenes, didn't report it to the county, I could be wrong, and then left these folks, whoever lived there, to worry about it 20, 30 years later. That's what I think happened. So they're in kind of a jam. But the least expensive way, in my opinion, and also I talked to Sam, the commissioner, about it, would probably be to repair that to work properly. And if you had the catch basin at the end of the straight shot from the ditch that's in front of the house, you'd have a place to go down into and rot out both directions without a lot of trouble. It would be a simple way to keep after it or maintain it. But of course, they would still have to maintain it because it is on private property. And the only way I know that they could possibly get some help is kind of what you mentioned, Nick, is to get some kind of SSA or some kind of special services put together for them. Because if you don't do that, they're going to have to band together and foot the bill all themselves. I can't help them, like I told you, behind our rights of way. Normally, if this was not an incorporated village, there was help for us with water resources of the county, but as soon as a village is incorporated, or a city, or a town, or whatever, they cut that out. I don't know if that's state law or what it is, but that it's no longer available. And there's a possibility that could have been the original, it could have been the original system put in, but because of the way it looks, it doesn't look professional. It doesn't look like a county had put that in. It looks like somebody else did it to fix or Band-Aid a problem that they knew was going to come back 20, 30 years later, and they wouldn't be here around to worry about it. That's kind of what I think. So I feel for these folks. I wish I could do more. We want to help them. We can't by law. I don't know what the village can do, but I would recommend somehow try to help them because it's a mess. It's not easy. And also, all that terrain around there is so flat in areas. Some of the areas that back up with water were planned that way. But that system, I think, was put in because Jim told me that his water has, all the while he's been there, 20-some years, has never drained to the front and down next door. Now, the reason we recommend against that is the ground, the ditches get, over the years, sediment builds up. Some residents fill them in, which they shouldn't do because a lot of them don't understand that ditch is actually an above-ground storm system. Okay? That's why they fill them in. They don't want to tip over in their mowers and stuff. But the trees on the properties are also heaving the ground up. So the ground is so high now, even if you built up the terrain, I don't know if it would work. If you went, we can fix the ditch. We can fix any ditch. We don't have any problem with that. But if you build up all the terrain between their houses and it doesn't work, and we fix the ditch to make it drain the way it was originally looked like it was supposed to, I don't know if we get enough height to get the water to flow to the next house, which is the corner house, go between his and Jim's house, and then go down to that low spot, which is 5 feet lower than his property and the two properties on either side of him. It's a real big dilemma for them. So if you folks can help them, fine. I don't know what your abilities are, and I'm not trying to, push it on you. I'm just trying to say some way they got to get this problem fixed, because it was really close to going into the Sweets and to Jim Dillon's house. The Tetzlaffs had water backed up on the other side of the street because that water by Jim's house and the Sweets house wasn't going anywhere. So that's where we're at. That's all the details I can give you. I also have the GIS pictures if you want to look at them. I have close-ups. I have topography, whatever you need. I'd be glad to show it to you. That's all I got. Question?
Just one of the points on the research too, is we don't have any documentation, there's easements on that private property for a pipe. And at the village records. But that doesn't mean somebody's individual plats doesn't show an easement for the pipe that is there.
Right.
The other problem is the village has got a standing policy since it was created that unless there's a public health issue, the village doesn't step in with an SSA. But you could say it was an issue of public health with the standing water, mosquitoes at some point. But the issue's gonna be, who will sign up for putting X dollar on their pin for the next 20 years to do it? I'm afraid the people that have the pipe underground that's not failing, the 7 homes, when it gets to Old LaFox, they probably didn't even know the pipe was there until we started looking at this. It'd be pretty hard for them to agree to pay money for a problem that doesn't affect them. And that's the issue. The SSA, you could establish it with the village because there's interest, but the voters that it's gonna be put upon, if 51% of them say no, all of our expenses, legal, engineering, won't get repaid. And there'd be an issue of setting precedent as well. Once you do this at one location, it's gonna be hard to tell HOAs or other homeowners that we're not gonna do it again and again. And there is a lot of areas, talking to Ray, and just from the little time I've been here, that have stormwater issues that are not optimal.
And
that need work.
I agree with Mark.
And the ditch lines that need to be reestablished, because Ray is being kind. People have filled in the ditch to have a level mowing surface, and then the ditch, the pane is in one spot instead of distributed across the block. So if we start, where do we start and where do we end on a policy of reestablishing the ditch lines? And that could offend a whole host of people that like mowing their yard, as he says, without, and not having standing water in their front yard.
We have a similar, excuse me, we have a similar, well, we have several similar situations in different areas. But there's one out on Castle Drive, there are four homeowners involved where the water, we did what we could do. It was a catch basin that had been blocked by a clogged tube. Well, the clogged tube only went underneath the road and across, and then was supposed to surface drain all the way down to the lake, you know, the lake that's over by Castle Drive. And what happened was, so we had Active Excavating come out, Carl Pollock. He came out and he blew it out with his big truck, his machine and all that, and everything was good there. But they really needed was a tube underground to go all the way to the lake and can not only drain the surface water, but also anything that got into the underground. No, 2 people out of the 4 wanted to pitch in.
Yeah.
And this stuff goes on all the time. And it's a tough situation because, and that's why I recommended fixing what's there. It's a lot less expensive.
Okay, we have a couple of trustees that want to speak.
Go ahead.
Okay, Trustee McKelvey?
I just had one quick question, Ray. I don't know if you or one of the neighbors could ask it. If anybody's ever tried to put a pencil, just curious, what's the cost?
Well,
No,
I can probably gather that together for you. I do have an excavator that's been involved in drainage for years, and maybe Mike could too.
You don't have a ballpark, don't guess.
No, I don't. I can get you that, I could probably put that together for you, but it would be an estimate, and I'd have to have the time to,
No, I thought maybe a ballpark.
yeah,
Okay.
I don't have that.
Trustee Person? Go ahead.
I feel terrible for the residents in the Burning Tree division subdivision that you're confronted with this issue. Unfortunately, this is an issue that we have, we could guess at how many flavors of it. Do we have 10, 20, 30 flavors of it in different places throughout the village? Unfortunately, we have almost as many combinations as you could come up with of ways that developers have tried to get water from here to there. Sometimes they've done it with the county when the subdivision was put in. Sometimes they did it as they were going. Sometimes it was done after the fact. So we've got a lot of different versions of it. And as Administrator Rooney pointed out, I agree, and I think that's my understanding as well, that the village does not have a policy and does not have a budget to address these issues on behalf of residents. So that said, what can we do? I spoke with Trustee Boatner about this before the meeting. I spoke with Trustee Millette. And we don't know for sure what we can do, but we threw around some ideas of what we could do. And those ideas sort of revolved around the notion of trying to help arrive at whatever is the best solution, try and analyze the problem. And in this particular case, it sounds like, Ray, you've done a really nice job of that for these residents.
Well, yeah, I spoke with Jim, what, 4 or 5 times at least, Jim?
You know, but unfortunately, they got the runaround a little bit, right? Because they talked to us, they talked to you, they talked to the county.
Well, not really. I spoke to him and told him everything I could tell him, and then I also went a little deeper to get as much information as I could. I also walked the property. I normally don't go beyond the backside of a ditch, because I'm not supposed to. I went, with him because he requested it, and then I was with Mark too, so we went and talked. We had the permission of the two folks who were the worst involvement on this particular issue. And we walked the whole thing and checked the whole thing out. It was,
So
we did what we could.
I was hoping that what we might be able to offer in general is guidance on what the problem actually is. So whether that means working with you, whether that means helping to engage a company like Trotter that is, familiar with stormwater in our area. Those are things that we might be able to do initially to help residents get a handle on what's really going on, get some numbers like Trustee McElvey was talking about that we could work with, and then when it comes to the SSA aspect of it, perhaps we can help facilitate what in the cases where we know there is a majority of residents, that SSA, but no matter how we do it, as I understand it, that the ultimate responsibility for funding it is going to fall on the residents that are affected in the proposed SSA area. I think that's correct, isn't it?
I would start out possibly, I recommend a guy to, or I suggest a guy to, let's say that. Carl Pollock from Active Excavating, he owns the company. He has the camera ability to camera the tubes, to give you an idea, and he also has the ability to give you an idea what it would cost to fix that system and make it work properly, and to be able to and tell you how to maintain it as well. But I'm pretty sure he's going to concur with a catch basin. That 90-degree angle is just crazy. You can't even service it or rot it out or even jet it out. It makes it very difficult. So he would be the guy that can give you the answers for cost, as well as a course of action and what would work. He does this stuff day in and day out, so he knows this stuff really well. So I just suggest him to you.
All right, Trustee Morgan, you're next.
Thank you, Madam President. I also sympathize with you because I also have water problems, but I have to deal with the county because I'm backed up to a county road. As residents, and I'm just going to throw that out there, it seems like you've banded together to be able to come here. Have you tried any private contractors to come up with a number as Trustee McKelvey was talking about?
We have a number if it was the water jetted out,
Okay.
but whether you look at that, that would be a temporary fix. Or we, to be quite honest, we don't know, we're not engineers.
I totally understand, just, and
That's roughly, the water jet process would be about $3,000.
okay, because I know, as on my property, for instance, when you talk about water turning 90 degrees, it never turns 90 degrees. So that is just,
That's actually like a 45.
well,
When it gets to the basin, it goes.
even at a 45, you're really praying to be able to get it to make the turn.
And he is correct. If Carl comes out and jets it out, okay, well, it's not going to fix the problem because you got a rotted steel culvert.
Absolutely.
And then you got space between each of those angled pieces of concrete culvert. That's not the way it
Well,
should
and you
have been
don't know if any of those culverts are crushed or damaged
don't.
internally.
No,
because
it's-
they've been there
and-
for 20
and
years. That's
Mike-
the bigger problem.
Mike and I were talking, Mike
Yeah.
Millette and I were just talking a little bit ago, could be rooted to who knows how bad. dead animals, live animals, we don't know what's in there. Also debris, sediment, leaves, you name it, could be in there. So it's a big issue.
Okay, we're going to move on.
If we are talking about this, and this is where a large concern would come. If we were to take ownership of this, I mean, it makes no sense to me how as a private homeowner, I would take ownership of a neighbor's drainage. And at that point, why would I incur that cost? Why would I just fill in that ditch and let it go? I mean, that's the way it was intended. So whoever had done this prior, prior to us living here, I don't know. But in the same sense, you guys are pushing it back to the private homeowner, and I'm saying, well, wait a second here. Why is the private homeowner responsible for the neighbor's drainage?
To be honest, I was never pushing anything back to a homeowner. I was asking a question if maybe you.
I'm just saying,
Yep.
and kind of say what you said about the runaround there, the runaround I was getting was, is that I kept talking to different government entities, and they kept telling me it's not their problem. This man has been nothing but helpful, Nick has been nothing but helpful, but in the long run, we're sitting here now.
Okay.
With water, I mean, the rain last night, we're in trouble right now.
Thank you.
Trustee Millet, you were next.
Thank you, President Wojnicki. Thinking about the precedent we have had since the example that was pulled for the SSA number 2 was across the street and a bit from this. That was, the county was in the process of doing that when we incorporated, so there was already a plan, and then we facilitated the implementation of it. So in that same vein, you know, we are the stormwater authority, so it is in our interest to know what's going on with our stormwater system, if nothing else. And I think we had 2 or 3 where we did studies and then the folks didn't, or said they would live with it, sort of thing. So I'm, along with what Trustee Person was leaning towards, is I think it's probably appropriate for the village to do some semblance of engineering work, have Trotter take a look at it, get more details. They can do research on if there's an easement here or not. To your point, there's no 100% whether it's your pipe, our pipe, the county's pipe. If it's on your property, it's always one of those things where it's kind of like the whole concept of an easement. It's your titled land, but you don't have full use of it if it's an easement. So if it has had a pipe in there for 40 years, it's sort of encumbered by the pipe being there, and if that pipe helps other people's drainage go through, you know, that gets kind of an entitled for the upstream folks to have some right for their water to keep going through there. To Trustee Boatner's reference to drainage law in the pure, the way the moraines and the glaciers left it, it's pretty clear, dominant tenant, I'm higher than you, you're lower than me, you have to take my water. It gets tricky when the water's been manipulated by builders, and it's been that way for a while. So, to your point, could you fill in the ditch? You can't. There's nothing to stop you from filling in the ditch. The challenge becomes, does the neighbor upstream of you have cause to sue you for if it damages their property? So it's really, really complicated. So in the bare minimum, before we say yes, no, or anything on what needs to be done, I think it might be worth our effort to engage Trotter to see what they can do. I was looking at the topo. That was the other good thing about having the reference, because my mind's getting older. I think you guys got maybe 7 foot of fall from one place all the way going out to Burlington, which is not that much considering how long of a run that is. So it being a little bit flat, to Ray's point, anything that's living in the culvert, any roots that have intruded through the joints that are open, anything that decided to build a home in there that has since deceased or is still active, all that stuff could all be in play. It could be the fact that we look at it and, yeah, a good cleaning and jetting will get you another 40 years. That probably would suit lots of people in the room, probably me, maybe not everybody. And take a look at, is it better to have a natural ditch per part of it and then have a flared end section for the water to go in and then have it run that way? Or, to Ray's point, just if it's going to be enclosed, enclose it properly so you have 2 pipes that don't meet in the open, they meet in a structure a la the other end of it, so that way you have a place to inspect it and clean it if you need to. So that'd be my suggestion, is that we talk to Trotter and get an idea from them what it would take to get it doesn't have to be a fully engineered plan, but something on the course of what we got from that we inherited from the county. So we're basically doing what the county had done, you know, as a stormwater agency for when we were unincorporated.
And that would give the homeowners an idea of what they would be signing up for with an SSA.
For the interim time now, why can't the village go and, get, action, excavators go out there, blow it out? I mean, what you guys are talking about, it's not gonna take a week, it's not gonna take a month. This is a project that's gonna be 6 months, 8 months, 10 months down the road.
But I think we shouldn't be doing a back and forth with the audience on a public meeting, for one, but to answer that, since we've already opened it, the problem, quite clearly, with walking it and with Ray is not the downstream pipe at Old LaFox working back. That pipe does you no good because the piece right in front of your properties, the red house and the white house, Jim, where you're at, you get most of the water. That is where the failure's at. So jetting the pipe from Old LaFox up to where the backyard, where it should take that 45 and move.
Actually, the jetting would occur from Longshore up and around that.
Yeah, but you can't, there's no way that I would ever pay a nickel of village taxpayer money to jet a failed culvert that has no bottom. And the research of the pipes, because it would do no good. And there's too many gaps and openings. It would be spending good money after bad, and nobody in their right mind does that kind of public works work. No, the answer is, I think you're gonna have, where the water sits today from the rain the night before, the easiest way, but it'd be you as the private property owner to open a swale up to that corner where the water's supposed to catch the pipe to go out toward Old LaFox. You could reestablish a swale that may have been there originally before somebody dropped a culvert and put dirt over it. Who knows? Because there's no engineering documents that exist as a permitted project.
I personally talked to Carl at Active Excavating about this issue, and he said exactly what Mark said. I wouldn't go in through the failed portion. If I did anything, I would come in from the catch basin, coming your way backwards, so then, did you really? What did he say? Right. Right.
He said, no, he would rather, it's probably better off to go the other way.
Right. When-
Again, I'm not an expert in this.
Yeah.
I didn't know anything about this until a month ago.
Yeah. No, I get it.
Okay, Ray,
Yeah.
we need to move on.
Go ahead.
I want to recognize and give credit to Nick. Nick has kept us totally up to date on the situation. He has taken several pictures and photos and sent them to our computers. We've pretty much seen everything you're talking about. And so we have had many discussions, and we'll get back to you on this. Well, we have no, I'm sorry, we have no answers right just today, you know, we will. And as a former county employee, I will contact the county and see if they could assist us in some way. I'm not making any promises, but I'm very familiar with the Water Resource Department, and I will speak with them. Yeah, Jody Walnick's just excellent, head of our Water Resource
Do you
Department.
want these so you can study them and look them through, look 'em over?
Yeah, we'll take them.
I've got like, there's about
Yeah.
7 or 8 of them here.
Oh, you've already spoken with Jody? Okay. Okay.
And as long as we could finish, does any of the homeowners you've talked to, Jim, have an easement recorded on their plat for the pipe or a drainage? Because yours, do you have a drainage pipe on your easement?
I have to get a copy of my plat, it's been a long time since I looked at it. So I will check with these people that we have
Yeah.
here and see if there's anything on that.
Because it's hard for us to work as a public entity except on an easement. And if the easement's not with the village, we have no way to go on private property. That is a public aspect of any taxing body. You know, as much as we feel your pain, if we don't have an easement recorded, we have zero ability to go on private property in that sense.
But per se, if there is a easement there, then
Then I'd love to see it.
Okay, we're going to move on. Discussion items B, social media policy, and Carmen. Yeah, Carmen has a few brief words on social media.
I believe there was, with the establishment of the new video camera here in the village boardroom, there was some question as to whether the social media policy would allow for the recording of the, not just the village board meeting, but other commissions and committee meetings, and then posting on the village's, or links on the village's website to the village's YouTube page. And I did review the social media policy. It does allow for that. So as long as there's a procedure in place, at least administratively, to record those meetings, the social media policy would allow for them to then be posted on the village's website. If the village does later update its website to allow for retention of videos or hosting of videos through the village's website rather than having to link to a separate YouTube page, we can just amend the social media policy to allow for that. I think the reason why we put it that way for now was because the website hosting didn't allow for us to host videos at this point.
And you'll see in the upcoming budget, I'm putting in for an update to the website to have that service, as well as have a better service on FOIA capability to make it easier to respond. So we have that in upcoming budget to kind of have a more robust webpage.
Okay. Janet, just
one,
a few words.
Small
Yeah.
detail. I believe that Clerk Johnson, in working with the camera system, was able to capture those recordings directly onto her computer, which she can transfer directly to the village website rather than going through YouTube or another social media site. So she did establish that she has an easy way to do that without going sort of out and back in again, if that makes sense.
Okay. All right. Thank you. That's perfect. Okay. 9 additional items from president, trustees, or attorney. Anybody have a final word? Yeah. Trustee Millette.
Actually, sorry, continuation, I just had a thought, sorry. To continue, as we talk about Burning Tree, the other thing I forgot to mention I was going to is, the county, as you well know, was making a lot of those improvements with riverboat money. I mean, that was part of the, and it wasn't.
Cost share.
Right, it was always a cost share of some kind, so the residents always had at least a 50-50, or depending on if they figured, X amount was attributable to road drainage or something, then you make a negotiation about, what's the appropriate private public share. What we found with this SSA and SSA 3, which was 2 people or 3 people, it's very small, is the skin that the village had in was we had a county plan we updated, so we spent a little bit of money on updating the plan, but again, that was a greater good thing. And then we essentially ate the making and levying costs on the SSA. That was our way, so that way the residents basically got the lowest interest rate they're gonna get using our bonding, numbers, because we have 0 debt. And, it's not the best thing in the world if you're the person standing there knee deep in water, but I think we all realize that it's at least something that we can, could have afforded as a possibility to make it, maybe a little bit less painful. So as we talk about this, maybe that's something we can look at, having our own little mini revolving fund, the type of thing that would potentially be a pot for, partial cost share on this, and then we would just say, it's limited to the, we always have a little extra in capital if we want to say, okay, we have a pot of 25 grand or whatever a year that's available for neighborhood drainage issues. Other towns I've been in have done that, where it was on a cost share basis, first come, first serve type of thing. But then it does come away from money we're going to spend on roads. So that is valid. That is valid. Welcome to the life of Public Works. And plus, if we can get grants.
All right. Thank you, Trustee Millette. Are we ready to move on, Nick? One last comment.
Yeah, one last comment, just in closing, back on that burning tree issue also. When these folks contacted me, it kind of struck a chord in the fact that, really why I believe this governmental body exists is to do for our residents what they can't do for themselves. Okay, so this is affecting 8 homes, pretty major system going through, and I think this far exceeds something that any any reasonable person would put this type of a burden on a homeowner. So I definitely do think it needs further discussion. Mike, I appreciate your input, and I think that's a great suggestion, getting started with Trotter. You know, we certainly can't do anything without more information. So we got a good start tonight, and I think it was a great discussion. Thank you.
Okay. Any other comments, or? All right, moving on. Motion to move into closed session. This is for appointment, employment, compensation, discipline, performance, or dismissal of a specific employees or contractors. Litigation that is filed and pending or is probable or imminent. So I'll entertain a motion to go
Motion.
into closed. Trustee Morgan, second by Trustee Boatner. Roll call?
Trustee Morgan?
Aye.
Trustee Boatner?
Aye.
Trustee Burson?
Aye.
Trustee McKelvey?
Aye.
Trustee Millet?
Aye.
Okay, motion passes, and there's no action after closed session, just so you know.